And welcome back to the channel, everybody. Yes, I've been gone for a while, but I took a little bit of time out of my day, sort of put this stuff together last night, just because there is quite a bit to cover since my last video, which has been a few months ago, sorry. But hey, let's get into it, alright? So, the very first thing I wanted to talk about was PayPal. Obviously, that's been the big news last day or so. PayPal launched their new stablecoin. Great for them, finally getting a good stablecoin on Ethereum. It's going to be issued by Paxos, 100% backed by US dollar deposits, short-term treasuries, and similar cash equivalents. Hopefully Paxos stays up to date. I'm sure PayPal will make them stay up to date, get those attestations out as much as they can. Probably, hopefully, actually do real audits too. That's what I'm hoping, but that's sort of a gray area. A lot of auditing firms don't want to go into that sort of realm with stable coins, but maybe a big player like PayPal might start to change things like that. But you can see here that you can transfer, send, fund purchases, and convert the stable coin. There's nothing about it directly spendable yet. So right now the only thing you can do is actually take the stable coin, cash it out, and use that cash to pay for your purchases. You can't do anything directly with the stablecoin per se. Now, why am I talking about this stablecoin thing? Because if you've been following on Twitter, well, you would have saw something last night. Which, give me a second here, because there's so much to cover I completely even forgot to bring that up before I started recording this. Okay, and once again, through the miracle of editing, we are back. Now, this was posted to the AMP Token Reddit by Open Specialist 979. Good job, because I remember hearing this. I didn't know where I could find it, but let's just listen in real quick.
Do you expect to accept fiat in the future over Flexa and possibly replace the current system monopoly? So then there was a follow-up saying something like a Flexa credit debit card that acts like Visa but with cheaper fees than Visa. So the answer there is like 100% this is going to happen, and allowing, so in line with just what I was saying, it's digital money, any digital assets. So fiat representations of that, through your bank account or an app that has dollar value, euro value, whatever that is in a digital format, that fits the bill perfectly. So that's, I'd say, one of the largest aspirations we have is enabling fiat payments through your checking account, savings account, whatever app you might have. To just pay. That's all it really is. So it's a denomination in your app. It's a digital dollar, whatever that is, whether it's a central bank currency or it's a PayPal currency or it's a Bank of America currency or whatever that is.
So you hear that? That's one of those things that might have been dropped out that shouldn't have been dropped out, or maybe it was just coincidence, right? There's a lot of coincidences. Because Dark Eagle even brought this to our attention, actually tagged me, just an hour or so ago, going through the old MCX Wikipedia. It's toward the end of that middle paragraph. The Paydiant is a startup based in Boston, now acquired by PayPal. You can go ahead and read more about this. Again, there's a lot to unpack. So yes, PayPal, MCX, definitely some intersection there. And if you didn't know, MCX is a lot like Flexa. That's why Tyler said multiple times that it was born from the ashes of MCX. This is sort of a thing that happens with any sort of consortium of multiple merchants. One of my favorites ever was the Plenty card, which was a loyalty app thing. It was the same sort of problem. Was a bunch of companies got in, all of a sudden, some of the companies didn't like what was going on. There were some internal struggles, and then shortly thereafter, the entire thing was just wiped clean. Which, of course, here, Plenty card. You might not remember it. I remember it because I was working at an Exxon at the time. Way back when. I believe this was a little bit before I went back to college for my degree. But yes, that's exactly what happened. Was all of a sudden merchants on the network just decided, you know what, we're just not going to do this anymore. And when you have a consortium like that, it just sort of rapidly declines, which is one of the things Flexa is aiming to solve, because it's not really a consortium. A lot of people can get into the protocol to actually stake their AMP to be part of the system, so we won't have that same sort of MCX problem where it sort of just has an internal rot, or in this case, Plenty. Which, oddly enough, the cool thing about Plenty, American Express, they're the ones behind that one. But anyway, let's go to something completely different, but still along the same lines. And we'll do that by listening just a little bit more here.
We want that to be usable 100%. I will say there's no way we would issue a card. So a Flexa credit or debit card will never be in the cards. That's kind of a funny pun. Because that's just not what it is. It's all digital. We want this to be through your apps, a totally new digital network that does not require those things. But it would function like that. But now it's just a digital system rather than the physical cards that can be exploited in those ways.
Which again, I don't have the time today to really get into all the patents. There's definitely been some interesting stuff going on in the patents, the grants and whatnot that have been happening that show the sort of security and robustness of Flex's adaptation, especially when it comes to like bill pay, where you can split the bill multiple different ways, multi-code. So yeah, that's another reason why you're never going to see an actual physical debit or credit card that says Flexa on it. Much easier to be digital, a lot more control for the user.
But yeah, absolutely. And then this is also where it really ties back to AMP in that I was mentioning that ideal system within the Netherlands. The rest of the world does not function like that. So even in the United States, it can take 30 to 45 days for an ACH or a dollar bank-to-bank transfer to clear between parties. So if imagine you have a system now where I want to pay someone or a merchant with my bank account, and this is like what Venmo does. If you look at the terms and conditions of Venmo, you'll see that it explicitly says to merchants, do not accept this as payment. This is why you can't use Venmo to buy things at the store. But you can use it to send money to your friends because you trust your friends.
And again, a lot of that is tying back to other things, including the FedNow system. I don't know if you remember this, but someone who shall remain nameless that claimed 4 billion tokens that they held, and claimed they were a beached whale, all this stuff that ended up being not true when the vote was finally tallied. Yeah, the problem with that was, well, FedNow is out. Flex isn't dead. Visa and MasterCard aren't dead. Everyone's still around. Even the FedNow press release said it's going to be years before it's fully implemented. And over the coming years, they're looking to places like Flexa, like Visa, like MasterCard to actually try to implement some of what they have to help settle these instantaneous payments with merchants. And I've even gone over in a previous video why there's a liquidity issue with the FedNow system and why something like Flexa Capacity or even better yet Ampera would more than likely be perfect for a FedNow implementation. But I digress. Let's get back to it.
And it's because the way that it's all set up, the way that these payments work, without going into too much of the details, they're reversible and they can basically, you can create chargebacks on these payments for potentially up to like 45 days. So if you pay a merchant using Venmo, the user could then file a claim on that and potentially reverse the funds. And so that's why in its terms of service, it says merchants do not accept this really under any circumstances as payment. So imagine if you could have a system that would now impose maybe certain conditions, and now you could have payments that essentially are floating for, let's say, 45 days. How could that work? Well, what if you had a collateral system where you could basically back those payments for that duration of time, ensuring that the people are not cheating and that the payment is actually good, even though maybe it takes 45 days for it to reach economic finality? Well, that's what AMP and Flexa are. So that's what we've set up. And so that's really the process we're looking to aid. So you can see how we're solving that problem really in real time of what this starts to look like in the future.
Trying to find ways to sort of hold collateral longer. Like 45 days, that's a long time, especially when you have such a volatile asset. And that's just the nature of cryptocurrency. There's not a lot of liquidity in the market compared to traditional markets, so therefore you have higher volatility. We have seen this before in the early stock market, even like into the 80s. There's a good Tasty Trade video that's sort of floating around YouTube somewhere that I kind of like watching every now and then that describes the great COBE, the Chicago Exchange, where everyone stopped buying, all of a sudden no one was putting in money, things tanked. And that was just because there wasn't as much liquidity then. You could do like a crazy percentage one day and then have a massive correction, while today it's more like 3 to 5%, and that's like an amazing day on the stock market. But anyway, about that 45 days, it brings me to another point. And that point has to do with Ampera Foundation. There was some sort of confusion, I would say, floating around on Reddit. I know one person was basically spamming their question to everyone they could, including myself. And it seems like they sort of got confused and sort of came up with their own white paper in their head. This idea that, again, it's the same rehashed idea that we've had multiple times before, where magically AMP is just going to be a governance token. It's not going to be used by Flex anymore. Well, that's actually not the case. We don't have a white paper yet, but what we do have is some marketing material. And this came out whenever Ampera did their consensus show, where they had that stylized 80s theme booth, which I love this booth, actually. I think a lot of people did. It's very, very early 80s. I remember these Apple computers way back in the day. Yeah, even the magazines, like they did a really good job, getting that look just perfect. But I was more interested in the details of the website when it was up. Through Google search, you can still find this document. And, right here, Collateral token. You can select AMP. Same with the loan token, you can select AMP. Again, these are just some of the tokens that they put on this marketing material. I'm sure there'll be more. I wouldn't be surprised if this was like the initial batch that was put out. But yeah, I just love this. It's got some sort of KYC stuff at the top. Your Telegram username, Discord, wallet, ENS. But yeah, just seeing this, there's a lot to this document. Again, I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, participation history, whatnot. It's almost like my idea of creating a DeFi score for a wallet. I've gone into great depths, not here, but elsewhere, on how I think voting could be solved, which I think some of my comments are being used to maybe look at the future of voting for the community members that are going to be part of the elected grant committee. But yeah, I mean, right here, clearly AMP is still going to be used as collateral. And my own harebrained theory is that Ampera needs to be formed in this way to give Flexa the ability to use a letter of credit system, so that way they could, sort of eliminate the time gap, you would say, between the settlement of fiat and cryptocurrency, as fiat inherently is slower than cryptocurrency. Even with FedNow, it'll still be slightly slower. But yes, if there's a lettered credit system, I would imagine that would make it a lot easier for Flexa to go more of a traditional debit credit rail route, tie into people's bank accounts to other banks issuing the credit, because then it would be a whole lot easier to sort of eliminate the volatility, which could be an issue. Now, me and the other testers were obviously greatly anticipating the testnet launch. Again, it's going to be a while. I'm hoping it'll be soon. I literally shook my magic 8-ball, which is like the closest thing I have to getting an answer, and it said that yes, Ampera testnet will be sometime this month. Actually, it said outlook good, so yeah, that's what I'm going off of. Hey, it's a magic 8-ball, it's fun. I could have just put it in Chat GPT and said, yeah, same thing, whatever. But yes, part of the holdup was they hired on Will as the new CTO. He's previously co-founder of Optimism, principal engineer at Consensus, so obviously some talent coming up. I mean, that was even put out by Bubby on the Discord, that Will came in, saw some stuff, said, you know what, let's just change it this way, let's tweak it this way, whatnot. So yes, I'm very happy that Will is part of the Ampera Foundation, especially because OP Stack. What is OP Stack? Well, it's actually what Base uses. Coinbase, BuildOnBase, the lending on Base. yeah, I love that gradient still. Very reminds me of something, but And why is Base important? Well, holy way. Love the username. He sort of decompiled the Flexa Spend SDK package and noticed there was a mention of Coinbase in there, where you can spend directly from the Coinbase app using Flexa. So maybe that's a little Easter egg. He also noticed that if you look through the Coinbase app APK, well, it's kind of similar. Was added to insert product name. You can now spend crypto anywhere insert product name is accepted. So hey, maybe that's going to be Flexa one day. We'll find out. And I think we might find out sooner than later, as Base is opening everything up on August 9th, so that'll be the mainnet. But yes, even I have started to get into the Base just a hair bit. I at least minted the NFT, because why not? Bridging over was pretty simple, didn't cost too much gas. Haven't really had time to go play around in base, but hey, I got the NFT, so I was at least there. I can say that. And speaking about Ampera, the Blockchain Futurist Conference is coming up. I believe it's August 15th. Tyler Spalding will be a speaker there. Yes, and Blockchain Futurist Conference is saying that Ampera is cooking something up for this year. So, who knows? Maybe the timelines are matching up. Maybe everything's starting to fall into place. But either way, I am looking forward to this. I believe that Blockchain Futurist Conference will be live streaming this show as well. So we'll get a chance to actually see what Tyler has to say, what maybe is coming up in the works. Hopefully it'll be something, more substantial coming up. But either way, it'll be good to hear about what's coming up in the future. One of the neat things about the Blockchain Futurist Conference that someone tweeted out associated with the conference recently is that they have actually sold more tickets this year than they did last year. So that's very promising in a bear market. It's going to be a very good time, and I'm hoping to see some good stuff come out of it. And finally, this is probably going to be the part where you guys are going to be like, really? That's it, just the website updated? Well, yes, the website has updated. So here's the Ampera protocol website. Not much on there right now. Again, this is sort of just a splash page. So hopefully we'll start getting more rolling out. I know that was part of the plan, was roll out the website. Then all of a sudden we're going to start seeing things like a white paper, like a test net. I'm sure it's on an internal test net. Obviously not sort of a public test net yet. And if you go to the GitHub, well, sorry, there's nothing there. I know what you're saying. Oh crap, they haven't done anything, blah, blah, blah. No, with GitHub you can have a private and a public. So I'm sure everything on GitHub is private right now. It even says here the people in the organization, no public members. You must be a member to see who's part of this organization. I'm sure we'll start seeing some stuff whenever more of the white paper comes out, that testnet. So until then, we're just going to have to wait. It's fine. I don't mind waiting. Perfect time to accumulate for myself. And a little history here, we were mentioning something about August 15th, because that date sort of lines up with something. That was this big sort of international convention way back when in the 1800s, where actually Ampere's law was sort of demonstrated, proven, whatnot. The official law was declared September 18th, 1820, and we know the history of AMP and Ampere. One's sort of named after the other, so I wouldn't be surprised that's a nice little Easter egg to launch sometime around there, between August 15th and September 18th. At least that's what I'd like to see. That's what I'm hopeful about. I like those little history nuggets. And either way, it'll still be before the end of summer, technically, because the end of summer is September 21st and 24th. Depending on where you're at, it usually falls in between those days. But yes, until then, that's really all I've got. It helps sort of to take these things, sort of put them together so that we can sort of see the bigger picture. I know with Twitter, that comes out, people sort of forget about it. They don't really take the time to sort of put the pieces together and see how things are coming along, see how things are building out, and even finding those nice little Easter eggs. So until then, everyone, take care, and hopefully I'll be back sooner than later.